For more analysis, we're joined from the occupied Jerusalem by Dmitry Delyani, an expert in Israeli affairs. Good evening to you, Mr. Delyani.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. And Mr. Delyani, how would you characterize the historical relationship between the US and Israel, especially in terms of its impact on the Palestinian lives?
The relationship between the State of Israel and the U.S. government with its different branches, the executive and the legislative specifically, has been developing and becoming closer and closer to the point that the roles have been switched. If we look at how the relationship was at the establishment of the State of Israel, where the American president rejected the whole idea of a Jewish state, to the point that today there's a clear conflicting of interest, to the point that Israeli interest win over American interest by the votes of U.S. Congress people and the White House. In other words, when the State of Israel was established, it was a case of the dog wagging its tail, meaning the dog being the United States of America and the tail being Israel. Now it's the other way around, where the tail is wagging the dog. The tail, again, being Israel and the dog being the United States of America. And the corruption, the financial, political corruption of the U.S. governing system, especially the election systems and the contribution systems and the corporate control over politics, have opened a lot of opportunity for the State of Israel to kind of exploit many social and political weaknesses and soft spots in the United States of America, beginning from investing in the memory of the Holocaust to creation of concepts like the Judeo-Christian culture, which is something that is totally fabricated and made up post World War II, to the point that people like Miriam Adelson, an Israeli woman, a widower of an Jewish American billionaire, basically is paying off close to $100 million to Donald Trump, for example, to apply some of her beliefs on occupied land in this part of the world. So it's becoming more of control through money and through the scaring people of something called anti-Semitism, and conflating that with opposition to the Zionist supremacist genocidal policies of the State of Israel.
Well, actually, you spoke about what is going on in the meanwhile, but let me here ask you, in which ways do you think the American commitment to Israel or the influence of the US over Israel has prolonged or intensified the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank?
Well, for the State of Israel to be in such a position of control, influence over the only or the major world power, for sure gives it more power to further oppress our people and commit genocide and continue to be committing genocide and ethnic cleansing, whether it was in Gaza or the West Bank, including occupied East Jerusalem. Having a blind support from the United States White House or the Congress, both chambers, has simply given the State of Israel a green light to do whatever it wants. And I truly believe that if the United States would stop its political, military, financial support to the State of Israel, our problems in the Middle East in general, and specifically as Palestine, would probably cease to exist.
Now, how would you evaluate the influence of the pro-Israel lobbies in shaping US policies that seem to disregard the Palestinian rights?
It's basically it's a simple game of personal political interests of the decision makers, whether they were in Congress, Senate, or in the White House. It's very simple that the state of Israel basically has found a way through a lobby that is not the Jewish lobby. The Zionist lobby is much larger than the Zionist than Jewish groups. It's for the evangelical churches, not all of them, but the most prominent ones. On top of that, you have to add that other lobbies have an interest, vested interest, in Israel's behavior and crimes. And the most important of them and most powerful, even more than the Zionist lobby, which is the industrial complex, they have joined forces to support the genocidal state of Israel because for many reasons. For the Zionist lobby, it's ideology, and for the military industrial complex, it's business. So we have ideology and business coming together to support the state of Israel in whatever is right direction chooses, because the Israeli rights interest in keep on the war and the tension in the region because it brings them more votes and keeps them in power. That's their policy. It kind of met the interest of those two groups, very powerful lobbies that shape pretty much the U.S. policy, especially in the Middle East. And we know that, of course, there are other lobbies, the oil lobby and other lobbies, but these lobbies, their fight is not focused on Palestine or the military Israeli military occupation. So the role this means, what can these lobbies take American politics to the point that it kind of contradicts the U.S. interests in this area? And the answer to that question lies in how much we, as Arabs and Palestinians especially, react to that fact and how we counter these efforts. That's one. Two, and how much awareness does the American people have through social media and other venues to show that these lobbies have to be limited in their power and influence over U.S. policy. So it's a partnership between the American people and the Arab people to put a stop to these lobbies that work against our interests as people, whether here or in the United States of America.
Brings me to ask you, what are the main misconceptions in the US about the Israeli Palestinian conflict that perpetuate support for Israel?
Well, the most important thing that Israel has been pushing for decades, that this is a religious war. And this is something that we haven't succeeded yet to counter, that this is a national cause, not a religious war. Unfortunately, there were voices from the Middle East with a religious agenda of given any conflict, even internal conflicts in their own countries, even economic issues, to give it a religious address. And unfortunately, these voices have been heard, coupled with the Israeli Zionist voices in the United States, to give this cause, the Palestinian cause, a religious identity, which is not at all, and which is to our disadvantage. And you may want to ask why. The reason for that is, if this is a national cause, the state of Israel has no excuse, has even no talking points. What would make people from all over the world, especially Eastern Europe, to come to a separate part of the world and occupy it, abuse its people? But if you give that a religious title, that God gave them that this land, they have a story to tell. And unfortunately, instead of all of us standing together as Arabs, as Palestinians, as peace-loving people, stand together to counter that rhetoric that this is purely national cause, this is a human rights cause, this is a humanitarian crisis, this is international law based conflict. We unfortunately have people among us that join, willingly or unwillingly, deliberately or not, given this conflict and a religious identity. And this is one of the major problems, probably the major problem. Two, another problem that we face is that Israel was able to speak the language of Americans and the West in general for simple reason that they are Westerners, they are Europeans, they are Americans, all strangers to this part of the world. So they know how to speak the rhetoric better than we do. Their social values are very similar than it is of ours, which is only natural because we are in total separate part of the world. But they have used that to the ability of Israelis to kind of melt socially in the United States and have people being pushed and cooperating together to employ people in specific sensitive positions. If you had the State Department for past couple of decades, you would see the people who are handling Middle East issues, for the larger part, have what they call family ties or ideological ties to the State of Israel. In other words, they are of Zionist Jewish faith. And I do separate between Jewish and Zionists, and we have no issues with Jews or Jews. You would find that the vast majority of them are of some ties with the State of Israel, to the point that the President of the United States proudly admits that he is a Zionist. For me, that's admitting being racist, supremacist, genocidal, all at the same time. So these three issues or three problems have caused the control or have caused Israel to win over the policies that pertain to the Middle East. And if you notice, if there's any political maneuver or a law or anything that has to do anything outside the Middle East or Palestine and Israel, probably these lobbies do not have as much influence as they do here.
From this perspective and on the international arena, what's your take on the U.S. Protection of Israel in the international forum and forums like the UN Security Council? And how do you view the credibility it is to the U.S. as a peace mediator?
The United States of America has no credibility whatsoever when it comes to issues pertaining to Middle East politics, especially the Palestinian cause. They are one-sided, pushing. They are more, and many times they are more Israelis than the Israelis themselves. As it says, more Catholic than the Pope. This is a classic case of U.S. Policy. No matter who occupies the White House, no matter who has the majority in the House or Senate, the United States has exhibited blind support that it counter its own interest in the Middle East, and one of the byproducts of such a relationship is for the United States of America to defend the state of Israel at any cost that you could imagine. Of course, this relationship is not logical and will not be ever logical. But if you go back to what I said about the corrupt political system in the United States, it would be much clearer to see how this illogical relationship was built and how is it sustained. And for those that say that this would make the United States of America lose its status around the world, I disagree. The United States, with its economy, its military, its extremely strong ties to major countries around the world, especially in Western Europe and Asia, has guaranteed to be on top of the world for many years to come, whether we like that fact or not. But this is it. Even when we talk about its relationship with China, it's a codependency. Nobody wins when another one loses, so that's even preserved. So what we have to do, it's either get into the game, play internal American politics, see where the levels we can go through, or we can always stay suffering the consequences of the Israeli-American relationship.
Now, how, from your point of view, does the U.S. military aid to Israel shift the balance of power in the region, particularly with regard to Palestinian defense and resistance in particular?
There is no country in the Middle East, including actually the state of Israel, is a match or even close to a match to the United States military. Not even Russia, not even a collection of the 10 countries
This is,
that come.
of course, this is from your point of view, and this is your opinion, because this is
No,
not.
that's numbers.
Yes.
Not numbers. This is, if you look at any analytical study about military power, you would find that the United States is actually much more powerful than the 10 countries that come after combined. And with all due respect to all militaries in the region,
Definitely, the U.S. is one of the most powerful and big countries in the whole world. But we're speaking here about its support to Israel militarily and how it could shift the whole situation and the balance of power in the region.
Well, I was going to that point until
yes, please do.
You commented. What I meant to say is, at the end of the day, we, as Palestinians that have not realized our state yet, we are no match to the United States of America. And you have to understand, especially with the Egyptian experience, that every time that you fight the state of Israel, you are actually fighting the United States of America. And in wars that it has won, like the United States, which we are all proud of. But at the end of the day, the United States, at one point, Egypt realized that it's not fighting Israel, it's fighting the United States of America. So because of the illogical, corrupt relationship between Israel and the United States, it is clear for everyone in the region, if you fight Israel, you are fighting the United States of America. And the only way out of this is to get a lobby that is, whether you want to call it an Arab lobby, lobby, whatever lobby, that would employ resources that our countries in the Middle East have to counter the Zionist lobby. And it's going to be an uphill battle, because the Zionist lobby is well-rooted lobby in not only Washington, D.C., but American culture, educational system, in every walk of life. They are there. They've been there because they are not based on Jewish voters. And by the way, the vast majority of Jewish voters in the United States that I have dealt with were anti-Zionist. Actually, the most anti-Zionist people I met in the United States were Jews, progressive Jews who are against the idea of colonial enterprise that Israel represents. But anyway, at any rate, the situation will remain at the status quo until we do something to counter and to disrupt that relationship between the United States and the state of Israel. And so far, I cannot see any hope for any materialization of such an idea in any time soon.
Right, thank you so much. That was Mr. Dimitri Delyani, a member of the Fatah Party's Revolutionary Council. Thank you so much for being with us and for your insights. And before we continue our